사진은 어떻게 해요?
제가 나중에 찍어서 모델 마감이 안 돼서. This is ice lemon and ice jamon, so yeah, try. Ice lemon and ice jamon.
Grapefruit.
Grapefruit.
So, yeah, my business from Weekend from Chunang.
Sure.
Yes.
Wait, she's a big fan of Papa, as I told you before. How's your weekend? Actually, you had a vacation.
Yes.
Yeah. First
You-
break.
First break here in Korea?
No, it was not the first.
Uh,
But it was the first time we went to travel around Korea.
Ah.
So we traveled.
Where did you go?
We went to Jeonju, Boson,
Green tea plantation.
then
Busan.
Busan and Seoraksan.
Saraksan. Oh,
Yeah.
you hike?
Yes.
Oh, it's really like a long trip, like a long way to work.
We didn't do the long way.
Ah.
We hiked with kids during the
Ah.
day.
We went to the Usandawi rocks.
울산 바위가. 어.
So you like it?
In Grenoble, we are also surrounded by mountains, so people in Grenoble they hike a lot.
Yeah. So where's your favorite? Among the every
Here or in Grenoble?
your vacations, among your vacations.
It was all very different. It was nice to have all of them in one. It was very different experience everywhere. We had seen Busan, mountains and Seoraksan, and the tea, the green tea, and also some of old town Jeonju. So it was much.
If you visit Busan, you have the fish. You ate.
No,
No, actually.
because I was a bit sick.
Oh.
My stomach was a bit sick, and my daughter also, so we tried to have. But when we were in Jeju during Solar, we went to sashimi.
Oh, sashimi.
Sashimi.
Sashimi is great. Yeah.
Okay, I already sent the interview questions to you guys, and did you like it? My questions. Okay, so the first question is, okay, briefly introduce your careers and what you do in Papago right now.
Ladies first.
It's an easy one.
Yes.
So, briefly introduce you. So I have a specialist. I did my studies in applied mathematics and computer science, first in Russia and then in France. And I did my PhD afterwards in statistical machine translation. I finished my PhD in 2009. And since then I've been working on different European projects related to machine translation, and after that I switched more to different natural language processing problems. At Xerox Research Center at the time. before it was acquired by Neighbor. And when Xerox Research was acquired by Neighbor, we started a project on machine translation again, and I joined the project. And which gave us an opportunity to come to Papago.
Yeah.
So here we work on different tasks related to machine translation. We had freedom to choose the subject we are working on and to suggest new subjects as well. So it's all very technical things, but basically we work on those tasks related to machine translation, maybe more research oriented compared to what it's more research oriented.
So you studied the machine translation to Korean, like French or Russian, English?
The methods that I've been using in machine translation, they are all language independent. So it's just mathematical model of language. And you use the texts. People have already created a lot of texts, like you know that this sentence is translated in English, is translated with this sentence in Korean, or in Russian, or in French, whatever. You have this data, and you feed this data to the model, and then the model learns statistics, basically. From this data, it learns the statistics of how words and group of words are combined together, and then you just generate new translation out of this model. So it's all the approaches, they're completely language independent. Then there might be some small tricks or some small difficulties related to the language. Every language has its challenge, but all the models I've been working on, they have always been language independent. You don't really have to speak the language.
I think you need to think of algorithm as a car and the engine of the car. The engine of the car doesn't matter whether it gets some gasoline or LPG or whatever. It just transforms some liquids into movement, right? And so the algorithm, you just take data and you do something smart with it after you translate. So whatever the source of data, whether it's English to French or English to Korean, behind it's more or less the same engine that do the work.
That's interesting. What is the reason why you became an AI researcher, especially in machine translation? And do you have any particular reason on why?
Maybe I should try to answer on your first question.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no? So I also have a master in applied mathematics and computer science. I did my PhD in information retrieval, which is more related to search engines. I did it in Grenoble, in the University of Grenoble. And then I was more interested in machine learning and natural language processing. And so I work in an industrial research environment, which means that we do some research, like I publish paper with patents, but we also are involved in transferring like research things to business units, or also doing European projects where you manage some work packages. So that's kind of the work we are doing at the Xerox Research Center. And with the acquisition of Naver, we are actually more aligned to the business value, to the technology of Naver. So when Naver acquired us, then I also joined the project on NMT on machine translation. And then what I'm doing here, so I'm doing a lot of things as well. I'm trying to make Papago smarter, and I'm working on also doing better evaluation for machine translation, meaning all these algorithms, they need to have a metric to say whether this translation is good or not. And so, yeah. And then I would say I work on things I think that needs to be done for the team, but also things that interest me, because I think some works need to be done to improve the quality of the systems, and some of the work, are more interesting to me, but I try to combine both of them. things that are relevant for the group and the system, and things that are also interesting, and trying to find the intersection between them.
These things, they are potentially interesting for the team as well, but they are less, they have lower priority maybe, so it's kind of combination of higher and lower priority things. So the next question is why you
Yeah.
AI research? Well, at the time when we have chosen the specialization, the term AI was not that fancy yet. It was, it didn't, I mean, AI, people didn't really call it AI. It was kind of forgotten term from 60s, I think, or 80s. And what I was interested in, what I really like and what I'm doing is actually, I've always loved the languages, learning the languages and the way how you transform the meaning into words in different languages. And since I've been always more mathematical mind, I love the structure of, I think I find it really fascinating to transform language in numbers. So that's kind of one of the motivation that I have. It's easier to formulate it after working all these years in the domain. That was I probably won't be able to formulate it back then, but I think that's what drove me to really work on machine translation, the mathematical machine translations, which we call AI research now.
So what is called it that you interested in that machine translation and every mathematical models and languages? So what's the name of the fields or research in that you interested in?
Yeah, I rather called it natural language processing. And what we call AI is a pretty big domain nowadays. It's mostly, I think, the algorithms which are called AI, which I applied both in natural language processing and vision and maybe some other domains. What I do is more concentrated on natural language processing to understand what is written and to try to get some meaning after from the text.
Okay. So how about you, Stefan?
So also agree with Asina. So when we
Yeah.
studied this thing, like doing research, having PhD in this domain was not so fancy and popular. But for me, I also like books and literature, but I also have like mathematics. So that was one of the reasons I decided to study this. And also when I finished my study, I was still feeling curious and unsatisfied. I felt I didn't know enough, so I wanted to do a PhD on this domain. And so, yes, so why did I? The question was why did I join, right?
What is the reason you became an AI researcher?
Yeah. So and then now I think with the new algorithm, like with the neural nets, it's kind of a shift, because before the research was a bit stagnating, and now it's very interesting because you can see a lot of things moving very fast everywhere. So it's very interesting to be in this field actually.
Okay. So the next question is, in the past you were a researcher and now you are a researcher and a Papago product developer at the same time. And is there any difference or difficulties between researching plus developing?
So I would say I'm still a researcher.
Yes.
I mean, I maybe have less developer skills, but the interesting thing here, I think, is that we are at Papago and we are the users of Papago. So I think that is very valuable thing actually, because we really see what we are doing, and I mean, when we go back home and we go shopping and we need to ask for delivery service, we really see that it is actually useful. So it's kind of very motivating, but also very inspiring. You see what is the output of the system, and you get some ideas of what could be improved. So I think being really closer to the final product, because it's not only the fact that we're using, also the fact that we're here, we also have access to the box, for instance, and we can get better idea of how things could be improved. It's different than just being a researcher and trying to hypothesize on what could be the problem we can solve. And I think that it's very inspiring. What is difficult is that I've always been a researcher and I didn't really develop developer skills, so which I need to develop now.
But you're a user.
Sorry?
User and developer
User and-
in making Papago.
So,
So I will change my question. Is Papago is more useful than Google Translation?
I use
To
mostly
you,
Papago.
as a user?
I use mostly Papago. I already use Google Translate. I mean, I think at the beginning we tried to compare both. They were more or less comparable, I think, in terms of quality. We didn't do extensive evaluation. It was just for our personal usage. But since I use a lot Papago at work because there is a browser extension and all the communication with the book is going on with Papago, so through GitHub, so in Korean, so we use this a lot. And I just have a reflex to use Papago on my phone as well. I don't use Google Translate. But I think it's better for us as well.
Okay. So same question for you.
So I think there is always so as Vesina said, I don't think it's much different. It's a bit different from what we used to do, like research, but it's not completely different. I mean, in all the work you do, there is always a tension between doing short-term work and like more long-term things. So I think one of the main differences is when we work at NLE, we are more spread on different projects, and here we are completely focused on machine translation. So it's helps us focusing on one product, one thing, which is a good thing. And I would say, I mean, here you have things that needs to be done to improve the system, like on the short term, but you also things that need longer term and more efforts to improve the system. So we try to do kind of both, actually. Try to find, the good balance between things that need to be done, that are interesting for the product, but not so much interesting for research or publication, but also trying to advance on the research front, meaning that doing some analysis and then doing new models to improve the systems. So,
which is maybe more long term.
Yes.
Takes
So
more time to.
I think Papago, like the members in Papago, I wouldn't coin them as like engineers, because even though most of them do not have PhD, they read a lot of papers and they try to benchmark the system, which take a lot of time. So they are really following what research is doing.
Yeah, generally, it's not only development that they are doing also some research within Papago, even before we write. So it's not pure product development.
Okay, the next question is, how familiar is Neighbor in Europe, and how's the level of technical skill of Neighbor in the global market? And if you have any episode about it, yeah, please tell me.
So nobody knows Neighbor in Europe, especially before it acquired the center. Now I think because they acquired the Xerox Research Center, which was pretty well known within the research community in Europe. Research community starts to know Neighbor as well. But besides that, I don't know.
I think in the web technology, in the startup and things, it's known.
Maybe because they are also at Station F,
Yes.
maybe within the startup community there maybe.
They also are in the academic networks now because they apply for Artificial Intelligence Institute, in France, for instance, so they are well known. They are actually part of the one in Paris and the one in Grenoble, and I think we have a European project as well. So they are well, like the academic network knows Naver now, but like the average man in France doesn't know anything about Naver.
Low chances that just ask an average French person what Naver is.
Yeah.
That's why Naver should try more hotels in France and Europe. Yeah, we are not. We are just kids.
Are you okay? But that globally technical skill is academically well known in that field, right? Compared to the familiarity in Europe, right? So the academical familiarities in Europe is more better than just average Europeans know.
I think Xerox was a well-known research institute in Europe, and since Naver acquired Xerox, then Naver became de facto a well-known research place. So
we still kept the network. People are still connected, so people keep know. Did learn that Xerox became Naver. So then people learned what Naver is, and Naver kept presenting at conferences, meeting people, participating in the project. So
and hiring people and growing. So I think it's known in
the academic community.
Okay, got it. So, how is Pangyo and Korean IT companies in terms of what?
많은 제가 말씀드린
네.
상황인데 그래서 이번에 계시다 보니까
예.
학교 쪽에
그래요?
대해서는 좀 약간 애매하시다고 하셨더라고요. 그래서 그 부분을 because I just forgot to say what we talking about.
I
Yeah.
mean, we don't know about this.
Yeah, it's fine. So, I will delete Pangyo and
Because the most of the company startups at Pangyo, the neighbor is the only company in this town.
We see people. I mean, we take every morning. We take the Shimbun line, so we see all the people
Going out at
going at
Pangyo.
Pangyo. That's how we can say about it.
그런 것도 여쭤봐야 되지 않겠어요? 기술 수준이라던가.
근데 아까 학교에 여러 초청되고 여러 컨퍼런스 다니고 제록스가 네이버로 바뀌고 이런 과정이면 충분할 것 같아요.
충분합니다.
5번도 약간 6번이랑 대체가 가능할 것 같아요.
아 그래요?
네네.
So actually the question number 6 is very similar to number 5. But 네, 한 6번은 괜찮 말씀 주실 수 있다고
네네. I will delete number 5 and just go to number 6. So, did you have any expectation or worries before you come to here on the culture of the Korean IT company? And now that you have experienced it, so how is the culture of Korean IT company compared to your worries or expectation?
Still, you want to start?
I would say so. When Naver acquired us, there was a French guy coming to Naver Lab Europe. I think he's called Patrice Morris. Yes. So he used to live in Korea to be a university teacher, and I think he's a translator for famous Korean novelists. And so he gave us an introduction to the Korean culture. We also had somebody like a Korean teacher from the University of Grenoble explaining us the Korean culture. So we get some, try to paint the Korean society and things. But we were told that Naver was actually more modern. Like young people wanted to work at Naver. Like the woman situation was better in Naver. So
we also had the neighbor representatives who came and present the neighbor and neighbor culture in the
Yes,
before we got
Chang
acquired.
Chang Song came to present Naver, so it was.
So we kind of had expectations of of what Korean culture is. We had some idea of what Korean culture is, and we had some idea of what neighbor culture is. And I think we can say that we don't have much.
I think it was more, when I saw the presentation by Cheng Song, it was more enthusiastic. I mean, it was interesting.
It was very inspiring.
Yes. But, I mean, it's not. I think Naver is more modern compared to the traditional Korean companies. So, I mean, this we can see in movies or in other things. So, and when we also talk with like other expats, we see, yes, we see that it's much better.
What we usually say about Korean society is that it's very hierarchical.
Yeah.
It's very very traditional. There is like a lot of pressure. There is you have to stay at work until your boss leaves. You have to go out for a drink with your boss. The role of women in the society. So there are plenty of things which we had a chance to read or to listen, hear from other people, and which we have never seen here. So it was not completely surprised because we've been told that it was different, but we could make sure that it is really different in all experience.
Okay. So you mean the neighbor and the traditional Korean society is very different?
Yes. Or at least I think Papago and I mean we haven't been to all the floors in here.
Yeah, we can speak only for Papago.
But I think the Naval Labs in general, like the Naval Labs, some teams in Patna, even the Maps team we met. I think it's
again, it's different from. I mean, the perception of traditional Korean society that we have is different from what we experience here. Then
yes.
We have a limited perception of Korean society. So.
No, it's true. We understood that. So we look at Sky Castle and we understood the importance of the title. For instance, like if you're a PhD, you should be called Paksanim or this kind of thing. And realize that Cheng Song he suppressed this some years ago. So meaning that it's very.
And it actually changes the relationship between people. I think when you should just address to somebody by his name or by his title, it's not the same. It's not the same style of communication that you will have. So I think it's very important to be at the same level.
So is it hard to live in like ordinary Korean society for you guys?
We don't know. I think it would have been hard. We don't live in ordinary Korean society. We don't see it. And at home it's French, and here it's a neighbor. It's Papago.
Yes.
So
We don't experience it. We see it maybe in movies or when we talk to some other expats or we look at forums about expats. But we have not experienced it here. So. I mean, yeah, we are just looking at trying to understand the Korean society, and we are looking at all these things and realize that it's like what we were told. I mean, we were told that Naver was more modern and more, I would say, it's not maybe advanced, but it's more like I think it's more like European or Western culture. So it's there is not so much a big cultural gap between where we come from and here. So
maybe one of the not expectation but fear that we could have is that we've been told the neighbor is different, but Korean culture is still very different. So maybe even being different, there is still a gap. I mean, it's like we're here, Korea is here, and neighbor is somewhere in between, so there is still a gap left. But it was actually more like this. It was, I mean, the fear was even like this sometimes. So it's,
yeah. Also, I think now I remember I felt because a lot of Koreans have the reputation of being very efficient and to work hard. So at the beginning, I was a bit afraid of maybe not meeting the standard, being able to meet the. But I think it's okay. So, yeah.
So the next question is, how is the standard or level of Korea's research environment compared to the foreign research environment, like your countries? And is there any difference or gap between them?
This, maybe,
Yeah.
I'm not sure we can.
I can only say that I think in Europe we have two systems of doing research. You have the nationwide, so in France you have the French project, but you also have the European project, where people have to meet with other labs or companies from other countries. And I think here that you don't have that in Korea, because when talking with colleagues, they don't think of having a network like we're working in Japan or China about this thing, which change, I think, maybe the way you can collaborate, but also I think Korea it's a smaller country, so it has less fun to do research. I mean, so I think that's one of the main differences. Because our colleagues, they say, yeah, when I want to do a project with Korea, oh, it's so much meetings to do this, so much paperwork to do this, so I don't think they are really.
Projects funded by Korea.
Yes, they seem a bit reluctant to do it. So I think the system is a bit different. So.
Yeah, then we cannot really assess the quality of Korean research, because all we know here is propaganda. I mean, we see some Korean researchers in international conferences, but besides that.
I mean, it would be for us a very strong statement to say anything about
Yeah, I think.
Korean.
So, okay, you have experienced both neighbor labs Europe and Korean neighbor, and is there any difference between them?
It's not the same people.
Yeah, and people is very different, I think. Actually, I just think she was wondering about the just like working style or collaborating style or like just very normal, yeah.
Yes, I think there are several things that make the difference. So first there is the size, because Netherlands Europe is much smaller, we're only around 100, and the building, I mean, which makes that you know everybody, okay, and you can talk to anybody, you have a chance to talk to anybody, so which facilitates the exchange between people and collaboration between people, because you can just discuss with a guy at the coffee machine and get some new ideas and start to work together. Here it's much more difficult to do. You really need to get an idea of that this person is doing this work, and then make an appointment with this person and start to work. So it's much more complicated, which is partly due to the size of the company. Maybe there is a cultural reason as well, but the size makes it's more difficult as well.
And also Netherlands Europe is more research oriented also. So yeah, there's no
product. So
no real product, or no pressure, no customer pressure to do. I mean, it has all the pressure to do things, but so it's a bit different also, because it's not the same. I mean, I would say we have less engineers compared to neighbor in general.
Yeah.
So yeah. It's very different, because in Netherlands Europe you have a lot of researchers, but on different fields. So I mean, you can be in the team of natural language processing, but talk with somebody which is an expert in computer vision, or some people who are ethnographers that study people. So it's kind of a different cultural mix between people. So.
Which makes it interesting as well, right? Because we're actually exposed, we have a chance to be exposed to presentations from people with very different background with very different competencies, very different skills, and sometimes it leads to some interesting collaborations.
Yes, so I think that's one of the like kind of physical aspect, but also I mean we have also cultural aspect. I think Koreans and like Europeans, I would say from Neverland Europe, they don't like also communicate in the same way, they don't exchange in the same way. So there are also, that's one of the differences.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's also in Europe we usually say that Asian people they are less direct.
Less direct.
Less
Yes.
direct.
They never say no.
For instance, Asian people rarely say no, and sometimes we are trying to interpret whether we're trying not to offend people or not to understand whether this answer means no or whether it's just I don't know. So there are still some cultural differences, even though the company is much more modern than the traditional Korean society. I think there is still some cultural there's still some kind of cultural gap which we need to adapt to.
Plus also we have the language barrier because we don't master English perfectly. Our colleagues they don't master English perfectly, so sometimes just by expressing things, you know, it's clear in your mind, but when you say it in English, it's not always clear. So.
And also, most of the communication in the teams is still in Korean, so most of the information we get is through Papago. There's also some information lost in translation.
Then how about the speed? Like then, because the Liv said the Laboratory is more research oriented, so it's a very project is very long term and long, and but here the neighbor is corporate, and this is very product oriented and service oriented, so it's very fast.
And also, on average, I think Koreans are more efficient. Are more efficient than Europeans, or at least French. I don't know. But I think they are more focused in their tasks sometimes.
That's kind of we were talking about easy collaborations and discussions with people that we have at NLE, but this is what also makes we are less focused on one task. We are kind of spread across different tasks, and whereas here people stay focused within their team, within their task, which makes things moving much faster and much more efficient.
Then does Papago can solve the cultural gap that you feel?
Yeah, I mean, cultural gap will never disappear. The question is how you deal with this, how can I say this? From our side, we try to accommodate it, and from their side, they try to accommodate it as well. So everybody is making some efforts.
Yeah, I think now it's okay. I mean, once you know, I mean, at the beginning we had to adapt to this, but it's not. It's
And it's we call it cultural gap, but it was actually more like misunderstanding whether it is related to the language, whether it's a language issue or it's a cultural issue. We don't really know, but I think now we're managing to communicate with them. And as long as nobody is offended and we'll manage to work efficiently, everything is fine.
I don't think Papago or any AI things can solve this kind of thing because it's a matter of norm. What is normal in one system and what is normal in the other system. So.
You mean just Papago like an AI translator is just a tool to help communicate? It's not.
Yes, it helps communicating, but I don't. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I don't see. For instance, the fact that we have the impression that often Asians they don't say no to not to lose the face, or they don't say something that is not working, for instance.
Not
So
to lose your face or not to make you lose that face. I mean, I have the impression that people really say to you that you are wrong. And for me, especially as a Russian, it's normal when somebody is wrong. You just say it straight away. But I feel like people would never
Yes.
do
Yeah, and we read that on forums where they say, I have to make up. Some people were saying I have to make up numbers because otherwise my boss would tell me if I haven't found the information, it would look bad on me. So I made up some fake number and it looks fine. So this kind of norms, I mean, I don't think that it's a problem with Papago. I mean, you cannot solve this with AI things. It's just what is normal to say or not normal to say, or the way to say it. I mean, Russians are usually more direct in their communication, whereas in France it's a bit less direct. So this is, I don't think you can. I don't know if you.
I think it's kind of a matter of generation. Maybe a few generations later it will change, but
You can be extremely polite. You can just change the politeness of the language, but it's not capturing all of it, I think.
Yeah, but I heard that some scholars' final goal is to solve the cultural gaps or cultural difference in the language, especially in the terms of translation.
I think I mean, when we talk with Koreans, they say when they look at the European movies, they try to put people in the pyramid, right? The guy is called John, and they try to find.
To understand how you should address to John. Where is John compared to you? Like one of our colleagues said, when I watch Western movies, I have difficulties. It's hard for me to place myself to how should I address to John.
So the language shift and models your perception of the reality, and there are some concepts in some language that do not exist in other languages. For instance, in Russian they have two words for blue, and actually I think these two words for blue make them more efficient at recognizing these colors, right? So they do the experiment on the brain and things like that. And for Koreans, because you have, I would say, some concept like this where you try to put people in a pyramid, or when people look at the movie and try to, not only thinking of the man who is called John, but John and some of his level in this sort of society, you cannot translate that, I think, directly.
And you need to have access to much more information than just text. It's much more like global knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, you need to know this concept before, because if I was using Papago in France and not being here, I would not understand these levels, this importance of title, these things. Even though I would have read them, I would just.
But you perceive it when you live in the society, watch the movies, you understand it much better.
Okay.
So, what do you think is so special? I mean, you had the questions on Korean language. So, what do you think is so special about the Korean language?
I think we could express so many things in one word. Like, if you said "great job" in Korean, it could be the opposite meaning to someone. By the intonations and who the people say to who someone, and sometimes we could express with the not as the language but as the expressions and the gestures. Yes, and I think the Korean language is more complicated than other languages, but on the gestures and expressions and every intonation that people use.
But this is maybe more conversational language, right? What we are talking about is more conversational language. When you talk to somebody in the same word, and it's really when you talk, it's not when you write. It's when you write as well.
No, writing is different, I think.
Yes, also different levels of difficulty.
So you think Koreans can be sarcastic?
Yes.
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 Actually, the Korean language is very like complicated to be taught now because compared to the alphabet like that, all the single words,
Mhm.
single character, because the Korean language is very different. It's combinations, and
Mhm.
it's made up of the combination of some like a ball or so yeah. It's very combination things, Korean characteristics. So it's very how to. I hope that there's some research or engineers think that while they use machine translation, it's very how to understand or put the data only because the components of language is very different. Like English to Korean, or English to compared to English to Japanese, English to China, English to Korean is some other world language to Korean is really kind of some little bit very complicated than other Asian languages. Just I heard too much information. I think.
I think there's also a problem of data, right? Because as you said, what we really need is data, and I guess for languages like English, Japanese, and English Chinese, there is more data available compared to English to Korean. So that's maybe also an issue.
Good sense.
Because our colleagues, they told us that also when we don't join, we see that Korean is a morphologically rich languages. But I mean, Russian is also very rich in terms of morphology, meaning that you have a word and a lot of different suffixes indicating the cases or variation of the same.
There are some, I mean, I see some similarities between Russian and Korean, for very little Korean. Like in Korean, you often omit the subject, which is like you get it from the context. In Russian, you can do it as well. You can omit the subject and get it from the context. And then you also have the suffixes to identify the role of the noun in the sentence, depending on which suffix you put it in the either subject or an object, and the order matters a little, but not very. In Korean, you always have verb in the end. In Russian, it's not in the end, but for the nouns, you can always chrome them and you put them anywhere in the sentence.
So what is your most hard part to making Korean as a translation tool? Everything?
I think it's not related to Korean, but it's more related to AI in general. It's you get all this algorithm and you get a single metric which say your score, right? And now it's to figure out what is the big problem that this model failed, or what do this model don't do right? If you just look at this number, you don't really know what it is that is wrong. And so you need to dig in the data and to look at the behavior of algorithm to see whether they do work on some noisy text or other things. So to me, it doesn't change the problem whether it's Korean or Russian or French or English. The difficulty is, when you build an AI system or something like that, you often get this metric, but it doesn't show you what is wrong. So you have to find what is wrong to try to do something new.
Yeah, it's also the matter of like when you do the translation, or even in standard AI pipeline, you train your model and then you have your test set on which you evaluate and you get this number. But then when you do translation, the translation of the quality of translation will be very different depending on whether it's a technical text, whether it's a chat with a friend, whether it's a news article or whatever, or it's just some advertisement or some SMS messages. So
Yes.
it varies a lot depending on what kind of text you translate. And the data that we have is also sometimes very different from what we have to translate. And I think it's
for some, like maybe 80 or 90% of the people, like a rough translation would be okay. But for some other people, they would like the perfect translation. I mean, if you just want to get the main meaning of the sentence and details, you use some details, it's okay for what you want to do. So finding the root problem is always difficult.
So the number 9 questions. What are the strengths and weaknesses of working in Korea as a foreign researcher?
The weakness is not speaking Korean.
Very simple, yeah.
Okay.
That's easier. What's the strength?
The strength, I think we are kind of old, so we have some kind of experience in research and then in this field, so we can bring that to the team. So that's one strength
The strength for the team or the strength for us? And that's
for everybody.
for everybody.
So I think one strength is we don't realize when we offend people sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we are foreigners, I think,
Yes.
sometimes we're excused for things which others for which Koreans will not be excused for.
I heard that from Eunjung when I talked with Lucy. She said that because the mostly in Asian countries, and the language, the studies and research about the AI translation in Asian language is not that much compared to the English, like a Western. So it's because you had a lot of experience and you had a lot of insights, so it is really hard to the Korean, like the Asian language study or developing or this engine more elaborate.
I also think that we bring some diversity to the team because although some of the members they studied abroad, they are mostly Korean people. So having different people with different nationality brings different way of thinking and different way of.
And also different background, right?
Yes.
We didn't study Korean, we don't have the same style of work of thinking, and we see problems differently. So I think we'll
Yes.
bring different people together can often be beneficial.
You should ask them also what they think about.
It's just personal question. Does Papago team use Papago when getting together, or like a dining, team dining, team like a team lunch or team?
Oh, they speak English. They speak
Global.
English.
Do they use Papago?
No, but we use Line. We use Line with
Yes.
automatic translation.
Which is powered by Papago.
I know push is good.
Not KakaoTalk. No.
So a lot of our interaction, go through this group through Line and Papago.
Okay, the last question is, so you're going to spend 1 year in Korea and you are planning to return to France this August. And what are you going to miss the most about Korea, and what do you miss the most about France while you stay in here right now?
When I read this question, the first thing I wanted to answer about friends like wine and cheese.
Yes.
And there are many things we miss in France. Because staying 1 year is not that long. You need at least a few months to get acclimated to a new place, and especially with kids, it takes time. But what I would miss most from Korea, I think, the energy of the country. They are very dynamic and focused people, and the Papagos. The walking here very close to Papago, using Papago, walking with Papago, and people from Papago too.
I would agree. So I would miss, I think, the work culture, I don't know. I think it's a pity that we don't stay longer because it's a bit too short just to get in, understand, and bringing things.
But we really hope that we will be able to keep working with.
So actually, I think the collaboration with Labs Europe and here will be better since we visited. So I think we can continue working on Papago while we go back. So yes, and there's one thing that I miss about France. It's just one thing I don't like about Korea is the air quality, because I have some like asthma things. So This is the one thing that I don't like about Korea. No fresh air.
I understand.
같은 마지막
Absolutely.
그 빼먹으신 분 11분 괜찮은데
아니 그거 쓰면 좋긴 하죠.
그거에 쪼개도 되고 사실 그
어떻게 했어요? 갑자기 까먹었다.
저는 어려우시면 그냥 편하게 쪼개셔도 돼요.
아 진짜 좀 실례가. So the last question. So how did you guys get married? Because am I right about your stories before you came here? So are we right about that you guys are husband and wife? So can you tell me the little story of how did you guys get married?
So we are not really married actually.
Oh, okay, I got
It's a
it.
small detail.
Small detail that surprised Korean people as well. So we met at the Xerox Research Center.
We both did our internship at Xerox Research. That's how we met. And we kept having contracts, PhD, and we stayed there.
So you guys live together right now,
Yes.
and before in
And
France.
yes, and we have kids.
So we
That's
have-
cool.
We have 2 kids.
We have kids.
Yeah.
3 and 8 years old.
Mhm.
So we've been together for quite a while.
Okay, thank you. So I'm done. This is all finished, my interviews, and thank you for making me make your times for me. And the last one, oh, 하세요.
Yeah, she's done. Actually, yeah, because like she, I also thank you guys for having the time because it was really like a funny experience. It's a good experience for both.
Oh, and can I take your pictures right now?
Yeah.
셀카 찍어서 올리시겠다.
그 혹시 팝업으로 약간 자기 소개를 간단하게 해서 프랑스어를 한국어로 번역한 화면이랑
예.
러시아어를 한국어로 번역한 화면을 스마트폰으로 들고 약간 그런 설정샷을 제가 하나 찍어봐도 될까요?
지금 뭐 그런 상황은 동의만 구하시면
아, 네.
나중에 사진은 따로 필요하시는 거죠? 그 메인
그것도 따로
사진은.
주시면 좀.
Because as you have a couple of experience that all the big proteins or all the newspaper had needs a picture, and this first picture. Well, I'll take you guys a picture, and after this interview, but she needs like because all the newspaper goes to the online trend, so she needs like a direct picture, like with the you guys use
Papago.
and say your translate like your name and say hello to English to French or English to Korean, like in this like scene. She need.
I think French to Korean and Russian to Korean is the best picture. But if you
So, us using Papago?
yes.
Okay. You sure you want Russian to Korean?
Korean to French is very funny also.
잠시만 양해 좀 물어볼게요.
네.
잠깐 여기서 하셔도 돼요.
네네네.
Because there are some like meeting room here, but
Yes.
I'll beg him now. I'll give them 5 minutes.
So, I did not understand what you want.